Anthony Heredia joining us to talk to us about the latest AMFI data that we have just got. Anthony, good to be speaking with you. Thanks so much for making time and speaking with us. The first question, because the heightened interest is around this number, the SIP data. Could you tell us what the number is, and has it been as strong as earlier month, or it has improved further?
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's actually improved further. We've crossed the magical number of 20,000 as per the information I have. So I think the SIP number for April comes in at about 20,300. And I think that's versus 19,200 last month. So about 1,000 crore increase in the per month SIP.
Good news for the industry, Anthony. Good that you're actually now breaking news for us. It's like a exclusive data point which you shared, just like our reporting colleagues. The 20,000 crore mark has been hit on the SIP number, and this in the face of issues like mid caps, small caps are getting frothy, people are pulling out, election uncertainty, and how can we forget all the issue around KYC? How have people dealt with the KYC related issues that became quite a discussion point all over social media as well?
Yeah, so you know the way it is, Ajay, with social media, sometimes the narrative gets grabbed by the extreme information. I can tell you from what I've seen in our own fund and across the industry, uh, that thanks to the efforts of the investors and the MFDs, actually, to my mind, more than 85 to 90% of the transactions have been in the validated category. The number of transactions in the month of April are actually, to my mind, 6 or 7% higher than the month of March, right? So if KYC was to be an issue, then you clearly would have seen a downtick in transaction count. Amounts may not necessarily be the best indicator. It's really the number of transactions. And I think we have to, from a perspective of the industry, thank the regulator as well, because they've also been pushing all of us, AMCs, MFDs, RIs, etc., to make sure we handle the customer. I'm not saying that there wouldn't be a set of customers who've had struggles, but I would say the large majority, in fact, a very significant majority of investors have had a very reasonably peaceful investing journey, including KYC. So I wouldn't call KYC an issue. I just would call it for certain sets of investors, typically those who've invested maybe 5 years, 8 years back, there is some hoops they have to cross. And I think just putting your data in a validated format in today's technology age where there's so much cybersecurity incidents happening is just a good thing for customers.
You are kind of, negating that point, because the mutual fund industry has been knocking on the doors of SEBI saying that the KYC norms are a bit problematic. We need to change that, but the data is saying there's no impact then. So how do you address the two, and what's the next step with SEBI to make sure that the KYC norms are standardized a bit more and made easier?
So, Nisha, I can answer this from a dual perspective. One is my role as Mahindra, but also as the vice chair of AMFI. I can clarify that the industry has not approached SEBI citing issues. We have been in constant discussion with the regulator, and it's actually been to, both of us, just making sure that the journey is as seamless as possible. Because obviously, when you transition to a newer format, you would expect certain hiccups, and making sure that those hiccups were as minimal as possible was the objective. So the point being that if the number of transactions that have gone through are actually higher than any point in the last 3 months, if most of those transactions happen in the validated status, I think the focus we have as an industry, and that's I think in sync with what the regulator expects, is how do we solve and make it easy for customers who perhaps need handholding to convert their KYCs from an on hold status into a validated status or a registered status. So I'm just clarifying. I don't think there is a discussion around how do we resolve. It is just more about how do we make something that's pretty seamless. I mean, just think about it, right? I mean, there is very few capital market products anywhere in the world where a customer with one KYC transacts across the fund industry, right? I mean, think about the US, 500 funds. It's not as if you can invest in one and then show up at the other door. This is only possible in India. And I would say give large credit to SEBI and AMFI, but I think the unsung hero is the MFD, the mutual fund distributor, who's probably spent and burnt a lot of midnight oil making sure their customers are ready for that change and given the transactions that we've seen in April, it kind of shows that their efforts have worked.
Right. Before we let you go, Anthony, it's a momentous day, triumph of the retail investor in the face of all the question marks and challenges. 20,000 crore SIP data is something to take note of. Just a few years back, I clearly remember the run rate was a few hundred crores, then it crossed 1,000 crores. So that kind of a milestone. I want to understand how are the breakup of the flows looking. Last few times, we saw some shrinking of flows from small and mid cap in favor of balanced funds and large cap. Is that on right now? Is that rebalancing on?
So Ajay, let me look at answering this from a perspective of what is the numbers telling us and what I'm seeing on the ground. And in some sense, they're both the same thing. I think for the last 2 or 3 months, there's been a clear shift away from small and mid caps being the flavor of the month to perhaps flexi and multi-cap funds being the more relevant product. But what I'm also seeing increasingly is a huge interest in thematic products. So what I think is happening is that if a customer wants to get a little bit of excitement in his or her life beyond diversified flexi cap or large and mid cap funds, where over the last 6 or 9 months they chose small and mid cap, I think they're now choosing thematic funds. And I would believe over the next 3 or 4 months, that's looking like the trend to follow, which is flexi, multi, thematic funds. And bear in mind, if you look at the data, very interestingly, a lot of money coming back into long-term fixed income. So I think the people are taking a view that perhaps interest rates are peaking and this is not a bad time. So probably the most diversified month of flows I have seen in a long while in the industry, which is also obviously very good news.
Right. Thank you very much, Anthony, for joining us today with your take.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.